How about Wall Street? Over the last 3 months, Wall Street has taken a renewed interest in the technology sector. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan in particular, wanting to invest in Facebook and Groupon. How does that impact your jobs?
Honestly, not a lot. I think in a couple of circumstances they've done that, but Wall Street typically has not been, short of taking companies public or selling them, has not been an active investor in Silicon Valley-based technology companies. And so there are some isolated incidents where that's happened, but I wouldn't identify that as a trend, Emily.
How about you, John?
I would say, given that companies are staying private much longer and consuming a lot of capital. I mean, just because you're still a private company doesn't mean you don't need capital. These companies, some of the big brand name companies like a Facebook or a Twitter or others, Groupon, are raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and putting it into data centers and servers and so on. So they do need a lot of capital. The good venture firms are focused on meeting some of that need, $20, $30, $50 million for a company. Through funds that can handle that kind of load, as well as the very small companies that they're founding as startups. But there is a place, I think, for the traditionally public investors, whether that's the T. Rowe Prices or the Fidelities, who are not seeing much growth in the public market because there are just no great high-growth public companies yet. There will be hopefully soon, and also to some extent for the vehicles like Goldman and JP Morgan are putting together to meet those needs, because the needs of these companies are high. So I think there's, ultimately the great companies have a lot of choices in terms of where they get their money. And I think the more choice they have, the better. It's a competitive market, and it should be a competitive market. That way, people like George can say, I choose to fund my company purely on customer revenue, or they can say, I'm really going to go for growth, and I want to raise $100 million to do it because I've got a recipe and a proven business model that can really take the world. And so I think it's actually a great situation to have these sources of money coming into the market. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Well, you need a lot of liquidity in the marketplace, and even private companies, we have an expression in Ireland, there's no roof rack in a hearse, you can't take with you. So Wall Street's providing that liquidity if you're going to do a leverage recap, and a very important sector in addition to John and John's companies.
Rich, your thoughts?
And from a venture perspective, those trains have left the station. I mean, they are so far out there. I think it provides a benchmark. But the Zyngas and the Twitters that we're talking about, that is not a part of the venture world anymore. That's now part of the Wall Street world.
So for the trains that haven't left the station, in general, are you finding it more expensive to get into companies across the board at the seed stage?
There's some commotion. I mean, I think there's a shaking out. There's super angels. There are lots of smaller firms. There are firms who are moving upstream and sideways and going into only energy and healthcare. So I think that the environment has changed. But one thing to remember is every venture firm has money that they need to deploy, and they want to deploy it on the best deals. So the venture firms are cheering for all of you. The venture firms are cheering for the entrepreneurs that have a great idea that can be a good company. But I don't think it's any more expensive. I think that it is more confusing for the entrepreneurs right now.
John and John, I mean, for you guys, I would assume most entrepreneurs want you guys to invest in their companies. But even for you, is it more expensive to get in even at the lower levels where it wouldn't have been as expensive before?
I remember the old salesperson's line, which is a customer says or a prospect says, oh, that's very expensive. And the response is, it's a lot of money, but it's not expensive. And there's an important gem of truth in that. It's all a question of value, right? If you're investing in a company that can really be worth $500 million, $1 billion, several $1 billion, then whether you invest at a valuation of $20 million or $50 million is really academic at the end of the day. It's not to say you can be cavalier about valuation. You still need to think about it hard. And the more mature the company and the more proven the business model, the more you have to look at the more analytical you can be about it. But, you know, people ridiculed Excel for investing in Facebook at $95 million. I mean, it's ridiculous now that they ridicule them, right? So you just don't know. Equally, we have Pets.com and Webvan, and you know, I'm sure we could point to a few, all of us could point to a few that we badly misjudged. I would say early stage valuations, it doesn't bother us particularly. If we think it's the right company, it doesn't bother us particularly whether it's a $5 million valuation or a $20 million valuation. Where it does affect you is ownership stake that you get for that money, obviously. But then it's just a question of putting enough money to work in the company. And the good companies can use a lot of money. That's the good thing about being an investor today. And it's good for the companies too, because there's a lot of money available.